Welcome to another episode of the Sales Manager Academy podcast. As always, I'm your host, Omar, and we talk about leadership in boutique retail settings. So think of wireless retail, think of AV, think of appliance locations, pretty much everything outside of your traditional big box retail location. And listen, a lot of you guys work in companies that have small footprints, right? We're not talking about an organization that's got thousands and thousands of locations nationwide. We're typically talking about locations that have sub 300 footprints. Maybe you're in a company that has 20 to 50 locations, either in a state within a region, right? Cluster of states. Listen, I grew up in a company where I first started. They had just cracked the 200 locations, or the acquisition of the companies or the stores I had joined was four on the West Coast, and I had just brought them north of 400 or 200 locations. I'm sorry. And from there, when I left, I had just helped them with an acquisition to bring over 75 different locations into their cluster of locations, bringing them to a total of about 750 stores at that time. And I created programs that they've used nationwide. Um, Stuff I used when I was a seller to when I was a store manager, district manager to director level. Okay. So this is stuff that's worked in vastly different areas. And we talk about things that you can implement right away. You don't have to wait for, the next quarter or anything like that. It's stuff that's going to help you and make a difference in the way that you lead your team and the results that you get. And that's the important thing is you want to make sure that you're leading your people to success. And the only way to really do that is to spend time learning how to be a great coach. And that's what makes you a great leader. It's not your title. It's not I've been in this role for X amount of years. You guys know this just like I do in sales and everything in life. Change is the most constant thing that we see, and everything's going to change over time. Can you use same principles as, previously? You can. You just have to adapt the way that things occur, how they happen, how it's delivered in order for you to be able to help your people move forward and for you to adapt to the changes that occur. And today I want to talk about kind of a continuation of a conversation we had yesterday. We had a great guest on the podcast yesterday, Caitlin Chalk. She's an ADHD professional, right? So she's a coach that helps people with ADHD, and she typically works with professionals more in like a corporate setting, right? But a lot of the stuff that we talked about is very adept to us as sellers, us in the sales field. Because one of the biggest things, if you guys don't know, is that oftentimes the kind of individuals that thrive in this type of environment are people that have some sort or some level of ADHD. Whether it's undiagnosed or unmanaged, it's kind of almost like a given, but we take it for granted. And there's nuances that happen. So the first thing that you have to understand is that your reps aren't broken. Okay. It's the way that you're coaching. Your coaching is way too rigid for a lot of your people, and you wonder why things don't stick, why I can't just say things once. And here's the thing, you can't just do things once and expect it to become a habit. That's not how things work in real life. But when it comes to coaching, when you find fluid coaching, right? When you find a framework that's very fluid for your style, for the way that you want to work with your people, you'll understand that that beats any kind of fixed scripts, any kind of traditional coaching or training, especially with your sales teams. When you realize that most of the people on your sales teams are probably at some level or another neurodiverse. That's the greatest thing is understanding where the nuances are, where the strengths and weaknesses are. Okay. And in sales, I'm gonna go on a ledge here and say that most of us in sales have some level of ADHD. It just the kind of personality that you have to have, it kind of makes sense, right? Um, And if you're a leader and you're wondering, like, hey, it's just my people don't get the coaching. I've done courses, I've done an 8 hour training, right? You guys know how I feel. 8 hour trainings or 8 hour fucking data dumps. It just doesn't work. It's old school methods that don't work in the real world. Because in the past, if you're wondering, well, Omar, it used to work 30, 40, 50 years ago. The difference between then and now is that we've really have transitioned from being more of an industrial workplace where things were very rigid. You worked on a line. You did the same thing over and over and over again. So, yes, you could be told something and taught something once, but the nuance to that is that you actually got to go back and practice that exact same thing over and over and over again and made it into a habit. Typically, that's not the case now. You might go through a training, you might proctor a training and realize that these individuals may not be able to practice this right away. It might be a week or two before they can actually implement it. You're probably saying, well, Omar, they have customer interactions, client interactions on a constant basis. Do they? Do they? Because I've seen it. A lot of times it's going to be prospecting. So, oh, yeah, we're doing prospecting. We're focusing on prospecting. All right, that's one aspect. What about the other aspect to it? The actual client interaction. A lot of times the training's focused on giving you a bunch of theory without implementation, and most importantly, follow up to ensure that it's actually properly done. That's the missing ingredient to create a true habit out of this. And that's where you need something that's going to be a little bit more realistic, more down to earth, and focus on the kind of people that you have on your team, right? And when you think about your sales teams, right, and you think about neurodiversity, you probably start to see some traits pop up with most of your people. Like me, for instance, I mentioned it on the other day on the podcast. I don't like office jobs because I hate being a desk jockey. I find it to be very boring. It's mundane. It feels like I'm doing the same thing over and over and over again. And don't get me wrong, there are people with ADHD, neurodiverse people that thrive in office environments because the office is set up in a way where they can adjust the office in a way that allows them to get what they need out of that environment. For the vast majority of us, that's not the case. So for me, it's probably like it feels like a prison. It feels like so claustrophobic, so draining to work in an office environment. But when I'm in the field, working with different people, whether it's my team, whether it's clients, yes, we might see almost the same thing over and over again, but there's going to be small differences, small nuances in those interactions that make it novel. So I can adjust my frameworks to this, knowing that it's similar but it's different. And if you're in sales, if you have ADHD or you're neurodiverse, you kind of understand what I'm talking about because it's that difference that makes it exciting. It makes it fresh. And a lot of our people are going to be like that, right? When you figure that most of your sales team, they're wired for quick wins. They prefer high stimulation. They tend to think in a non-linear pattern, non-linear method, right? Those are traits of ADHD where we kind of bounce around ideas. Well, what if we do this, this, and this? It's hard sometimes to finish one thing because we want to jump on the next thing that pops up, kind of like the squirrel in the window. Um, it's just something different, something shiny that pops up. Oh, okay. And we kind of forget what we were doing or we lose track of our state of mind, our flow. And it kind of makes us suffer a little bit. But having a right coaching program or system in place allows you to overcome that as a leader so that your team can also move forward and overcome those small little roadblocks, those small bump in the roads that pop up. So if you think about like old traditional coaching sessions, and once again, guys, I've said this before and I will always continue to say this. Write-ups and coaching sessions are not the same. They are completely different things. Do not group them together. You need to understand, and your people need to understand that when you do a coaching session, you're not writing them up. They're completely different from one another. They don't belong in the same conversation. It's not, I'm going to write you up and this is your coaching. They are not the same. Okay. That's like a coach on any kind of sports team, pretty much on your first attempt at doing something. They're like, all right, you fucked up. This is your punishment and I'm not going to help you get better, right? Well, how do I adjust? You're not giving them any time to implement the changes and make true change occur. And that's not how things work in the real world. Okay. So old models, typically, you're talking about like long sessions. You're talking about doing like an hour or two um, review session to get feedback, do a whole presentation, pony show, the whole thing, right? We already know when it comes to commissions, we don't get those right away. It takes a little bit of time, so we adjust to that. But they understand that, hey, that's what I'm looking for. That's what I'm wanting, right? And it's just very generalized information or generalized practices. The 8 hour data dump, for instance, whether it's an 8 hour training or a weekend training that lasts hours and you can't go back and implement it and you've got a bunch of information that just dropped on you, it doesn't do anybody any good. It doesn't help your people become better. It doesn't allow them to take the information and implement it and use it right away so that they can get that instant gratification, that dopamine hit of, oh, snaps, this worked. I can do something with this. I can make it my own. I am seeing some kind of result with it. And that's where you need to have something that's going to be more flexible. That's where you need something that's not rigid, that your team can take and be able to get that feedback right away and utilize that information, utilize those practices instantly and start to see some result from it. In sales, we know that 60% of the time it's going to work every time. Yeah, so that's one of my favorite quotes from Anchorman. But it's also so pertinent to the sales environment because not every interaction, doesn't matter how great of a seller you are or a closer you are, not everything is going to lead to a sell right away. But the majority of the time, if you can get something to work for you, the majority of the time, that gives you an edge so that you can continue to move forward and you just need that small little edge to become better. For instance, if you guys have a 10% close rate and you're trying to become better, you're not looking for a 50% close rate. If you can double your close rate from one to two people, 60% of the time, instead of after, doing 100 interactions and closing 10 people, you got 100 interactions, but now you're closing 16 people. That 50% jump is a big difference. And that's what happens when you have a little bit of an extra edge. And that's what coaching does for your people because you're able to give them, if you have a proper coaching system, right? Like I do the 15-minute framework. If I can give my people feedback within a short period of time in real time, or if I can do a quick coaching session with them, 15, 30 minutes, they can take something away from that session, turn around and use it right away and be able to actually master something or become at least 1% better at something. And that allows them to start seeing better results sooner. And what that does is it starts to rewire their brain, starts to rewire some of the old habits. And that's what we want to do. We don't want to wait, a while before we do this. I don't want to have the conversation now and then 3 weeks later do a follow-up conversation. I get it as a DM, you're probably going to be like, Omar, but I don't go to my stores every single day. I got 15 locations. I could only see them maybe once or twice a week if I'm lucky. I get it. You are a coach, you are a trainer, you are a leader, and you have a team. So if you're on the football field, you're the head coach. You got your defensive coaches, you got your offensive coaches. Those are your store leaders. Those are your assistant managers. Those are your store leads. You, as the head coach, need to train and develop the right people underneath you to ensure that they come together and can work together and can help develop your team. You think a real head coach just brings in whatever offensive and defensive line head coach or coach, I'm sorry, and lets them do whatever they want? No, they have to get some direction. Even though they got the experience, they still need to be brought into the organization. They still need to be developed a little bit to make sure that their style and your style are going to work together to make the team better. And that's what you're doing as a leader, as a district, area, regional. You got to focus on making sure that you're training up your coaches on the field. You're training your field leaders, your store managers, your assistant managers to be able to do coaching sessions, quick coaching sessions, to do observations with your team to make sure that they're giving real-time feedback. I don't need my sales leaders, my store leaders, to be on the fucking floor outselling their people. Because if they're doing that, I know they're not developing their people. If I can get my teams to be 60 to 80% as good as I am, at two people performing at that level, they're already outperforming one person. At four people, that's triple to quadruple or more. And when you realize that as time progresses, they will continuously get better, the results will get better. You start to realize if I spend a little bit of time now coaching, developing, and training my people, that means they will get better over time and we're going to have better results. Listen, you don't double, and I've been there, I've done this. You don't double the production of an area of a district and only focus on selling. That doesn't happen. You focus on training, you focus on developing, and that brings in that change, that brings in that investment towards your people. It allows to see them those quick wins, those changes. So they start seeing those aha moments. They start to realize I can do more and they want to do more. And that makes them far more successful than you trying to get them to follow you, follow your lead by watching you sell. That's not how that works. You can't do that on a consistent daily basis and expect to yield great results. That's just the way it is. And that's what happens when you start to focus on coaching and developing your people. You start to adapt leaders to win better and you move them away from old thoughts, old school methods, right? From having rigid methodologies that burn out the teams, that don't allow their teams to truly adjust and win on their terms. Coaching shouldn't feel like you're telling somebody something. Your coaching sessions should feel like you're having a conversation. Yes, you have a framework to follow, right? But it's not a script. You're not being rigid about it. You're having a conversation, you're asking some questions, and you're allowing them to speak 80% of the time. It's just like anything else when you're meeting somebody new. They feel more valued, like you're interested in them because you're allowing them to tell you more about what they do, about who they are. When you're doing a coaching session and you're doing exactly that, right? Let's talk about, so for instance, this is like the form that I use. Okay. All right, let's talk about your attainments, right? What we hit last month. Go through the goal settings. All right, that's awesome. We really did some great stuff. What are your goals for this month? All right, boom. Great. And what's going to be the focus that you want to improve on this month? If we had to pick one of those goals and that's going to help you achieve them all, what's the one thing you want to focus on? Awesome. Now let's talk about three things that are going to help you to get there, right? So to achieve this goal, what are going to be the three action items that you're going to do to achieve this? And be specific about what you want to hit. And that's when the real coaching begins, because that's the real conversation piece. They start going through. They give you a quick BS answer with what they want you to think or what they think they want you to say. And then you have them elaborate more. If you're wondering what's the trick to get them to tell me more when they just are clamping up? It's one question and then one action that you do right afterwards. And it's very hard for a lot of people to do it. You guys ready for this? The follow-up question is, what else? And then you shut the fuck up. And the crazy thing is that for a lot of people, that small little piece of silence, and that wasn't long, I think that was just a few seconds, is awkward. Okay. And that's perfectly normal. When you're first doing it, it is going to feel awkward. But once you start practicing it more and start doing it more, especially once you start seeing the results, you'll become a pro at just asking that question and shutting up until they say something. And then you follow it up. Typically, it's best practice to use that at least three different times. Don't overdo it. Don't go five. If after the third time they really, really struggle and they can't say anything else, it means that at the moment, yes, they they can't really think of anything else. Okay. If they still can give you something else, that's when you want to go to the fifth one. Typically by five, they've kind of outthought it and they can't really give you anything more without repeating what they've just said. Okay. And at first, this is what you're going to have to do because once again, you're developing your people, you're coaching and training them. So they have to train new muscles. They have to work out new muscles that haven't really been used. And once that happens a few times, they start to understand the process. So they're not going to, you know, give you a quick one sentence answer. They're going to be more focused, more elaborate about the process. Okay, like this is what I'm going to do, and this is the reason I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it when this happens, and this is what I'm going to say, and this is what I'm going to do. And then they go through it, and they start to realize, hey, this is kind of like a role play session without it being an awkward role play session. Why? Because this portion does the visualization practice for them. And that visualization practice is just like role playing, but better because the mind can't differentiate between us role playing and me thinking of a role play situation with a previous client or customer interaction that I had. They take it as though it's the real thing. And it's far more effective because there's nuances in that uh, visualization that they just had that you wouldn't capture with a role play session. That is the crazy thing about why it's so effective and why it works so well. So you want to have that. And that's going to allow you to be able to change up the conversation because you're able to adjust it per person. It allows you to focus more on the individual and it helps to create better momentum, not just for you, but more importantly for your individual, for your seller, for your coach, the person that you're coaching, right? So that's kind of the whole thing. And then if you're stuck, you need questions, there's always stuff that you can get like, you know, questions to be able to ask to continue the conversation or at least start the conversation. That's good, like good tools to have in your back pocket. So you want to be able to do that, right? But that's the most important thing when it comes to coaching, being able to really have something that's going to be fluid and allow you to work with your people on a system base, but also make it feel individual. And that's what's going to matter to your people because it's no longer I'm a cog in the machine. Remember, most of our salespeople have some form of ADHD. You probably have some form of ADHD. Welcome to the family. Um, but that's the reason why. Oftentimes, you know, we have this notion we're going to do a bunch of things, see what sticks, and then move with that. When you have something where you don't have to throw spaghetti against the wall to see what sticks, you can start getting results sooner and faster and better results. That's when it allows you to focus on something that's better, right? Because once you get the coaching aspect down, the next level to that is getting your hiring right, your hiring process. Don't focus on the hiring process because you can hire great people. But if you can't train, develop, and coach them, your back end is going to be as bad, if not worse, than your front end. You're constantly churning through. You're wondering why you have a 60% attrition rate, why 60% of the people you hire end up leaving within a certain period of time. Typically, it's within 90 to 180 days, right? 3 to 6 months. And you're wondering like, why do I have such a high attrition rate? Why can't I keep people? I hired great individuals. It's not about hiring. It's about cultivating that coaching environment. Because when you start to do that, you start to invest in your people, you start to develop your people, they feel it. And that's what you call culture. That's when you've developed a culture. You don't have to talk about it. The actions speak for the culture itself. And that's very, very important. Um, and guys, realize that coaching, it's not a personality trait. A personality trait is not somebody's a great coach. It's a habit. A coach is a coach because this is what they do. These are the habits that they do. They spend time training and developing. They may have spent time in the, you know, on the sales field in the past. But most importantly, they've created a habit of coaching and developing people over time, seeing what works, seeing what doesn't, focusing and analyzing that. And that's what you want to do as a leader. That's what you want to really focus on and pay attention to, right? And guys, you don't need to be a therapist. A coach is not a therapist. A coach is somebody who develops a system and is able to flex it to the needs of their people, to their sales team. You can adjust it, it's fluid. Most importantly, it works and it's repeatable. I can teach other people to do this and they are successful with it. And that's where you start to see differences. That's where you start to see future leaders start to be developed because they're able to do this. They're able to develop others. They're able to take it on their own and really not just keep their people engaged and trained and developed, but it's not like they're trying to herd or you're trying to herd a bunch of cats. Now they got a mission. Now they're in line. Now, if you guys want to talk about you're the wolf pack or whatever, the wolf pack works as a unit, as a team. There's no such thing as a lone wolf. A coyote, maybe, but even now, if you guys have been watching the news, coyotes are starting to change more to pack animals. But here's the thing when the team works together, the leader can focus on developing those that need it the most. That's when the team as a whole wins and when the individuals on the team also win. You have to spend time as a leader training and developing your people, coaching them up in order for you to see that success. And in order for you to be a coach, you need to understand that I brought these people in, these people have been brought into my team because we see something in them and we need to develop and refine that. It's not this individual was brought in, they did their basic trainings to make them compliant, whether it's with us, our company, or the industry, or the franchise company that we're working through, right? Wireless carriers, you know what I'm talking about. Uh, Now it's the real job of training and developing them. Because if all you're doing is you're bringing people in, just give them that basic, and then here, figure it out, you're gonna learn on the field. You're not letting them learn on the field. They feel like they're treading water. There is so much information being thrown at them that, well, we only keep the strongest ones. Bullshit. You're not keeping the strongest ones. If you had focused on training and developing those individuals that you had lost, I guarantee you they would have been a lot better. You would have spent less time and money on interviewing, recruiting, and hiring individuals. And your teams would actually be ahead of schedule when it comes to budgets. They would be over budget. You'd be asking for an increase in headcount. Like, this is the stuff, this is what I call consequences. These are the consequences of the actions of coaching. Guys, if you guys don't know the term, consequence isn't necessarily a bad thing. We use it in light of a bad event, but a consequence is just the result of an action. Just another way of saying that. So they don't have to be negative consequences. They can be positive consequences, meaning I need more headcount, meaning we see that there's more need. So maybe we can finally get that additional location we're looking for. Maybe we can move into a better location or get the remodel done. My people are making more money. That's the importance of being a great coach as a leader, owing it to your people to be the coach. You're not the boss. Okay. You're not leading from the fucking back room office whenever you're doing a visit. You're being intentional. You're spending time coaching and developing people. You're spending time training and developing your sales leaders to be better coaches. And that in line makes them better trainers for their people. It makes them be more focused on how they're training their people, how they're talking with their people, what kind of time they're spending with their people. And you start to see a shift in everybody. You start seeing more positivity. You start seeing better results. You start to see less attrition. And I'm talking about both churn, right? When it comes to products being sold and actually not paid for, fraud, right? Because now people are spending more time, they're taking more pride in their work, and also employee attrition and losing people. Now, you're never going to stop employee attrition. Let's make that a very important understanding. Why? Because maybe somebody wants to grow, but there's just no room for them to grow within your organization in that space. Okay. Maybe they have to relocate, but they don't want to because they have a family and all that stuff. But so they look for a different opportunity. There's nothing wrong with that. Or it is attrition because they do grow and move into a different opportunity. Like I live in the Houston area. So I've had employees who grew, developed, and took a position in one of the neighboring markets in the Houston territory. It's perfectly fine. I want them to grow. I want them to experience some things that I've experienced in my life, specifically growth, professional career growth. And you don't want to stop them. Why? Because that allows the organization to see, hey, this individual is growing a lot of leaders and they're very successful. We need more of this. So it puts you in a better limelight. And then also, I don't have to worry about bringing another person on board because I already know that I have a system in place that's going to allow us to find somebody, train and coach them up, and they're going to be successful. That's where you start to see it. That's when you start to see those results. You're not waiting for that A personality to come in, that top seller that's just going to bring it because I just lost my top seller and now that market, that's location, it's hurting. I don't look to find those specific unicorns. I look to develop what are known as unicorns. And you're wondering, damn, this person is really great at interviewing, at recruiting, at hiring people. It's not that I'm great at interviewing and hiring people. I have a system for that too. It's that because of the system, I'm able to bring in individuals that I can see are going to get developed and trained and are going to be great with what we do. I don't need them to be, you know, top ranked players. I don't need them to be the best of the best. I can train and develop them because I have a system and I've taught my leaders how to be successful with that system. So when I put them in a store, I know already what kind of process they're going to go through. And that allows them to be better. It allows them to be successful. It gives them room to grow and they don't feel that they're drowning, that they're treading water. That makes all the difference when it comes to successful team building, to being a successful field leader, whether you're an area, district, regional. That makes a big difference because you're no longer having to worry about performance. You're no longer taking those emergency calls on weekends. I get it. I work 6 days a week, right? Half days on Saturday. I was off on Sundays. But guess who was always on the fucking phone? At the beginning, when that's not in place and you're going through, it sucks because you're taking phone calls on Sundays because your people can't figure things out and their store manager's off. And because they're hourly and your salary, somebody's making that phone call and taking the phone call, and it's obviously not your store manager. But once you start getting that system in place and you stop getting those emergency calls, you stop getting those calls on Sundays after hours, right? Or after your work hours, it gets a bit lonely. It really does. But it also gives you that sense of accomplishment of my team is solid. I don't have to worry about emergencies. And if I do get a phone call, it is like a legit emergency. Okay. But I don't have to worry about all the other stuff. I don't know how to do this part. What do I do with this? They can think through the problems. And I've talked about in different podcasts the 80-20 rule, right? When it comes to problem solving, I've always had my team, acknowledge the whatever the issue was and give it only 20% of the attention and focus the majority of their attention on 80%, the 80% of the attention on trying to find a solution. It starts to also build that in them and start to ingrain it. And they start to see better results because they can start taking things and taking charge of things themselves, not needing to wait for somebody to tell them what to do, not needing to ask for permission on doing things. They're able to really move forward and get those things done. So that's what you want to focus on, right? So you don't need to fix your reps. You don't need to fix your sales teams per se, right? The individual players. What you need to fix is find a coaching method and coach in a way that fits your team. And that's going to get you better results. It's going to allow you to be a better field leader, a better sales leader. Leaders coach, leaders train, leaders develop others. That's what it means to be a leader. So I'll leave it there, guys. As always, I want to thank you all for joining us for another episode here at the Sales Manager Academy podcast. I'm your host, Omar, and I'll catch you on the next one.